Hello, CSAEers. It is Thursday, July 27th, 2017, and this is episode 7 of Conquering Content. I am Steve Trustrum, CSAE's Manager of Content, and today we're going to be talking about scheduling content, how to do it, and why it's important. Just to note, normally I do this on Facebook Live, but I'm recording it beforehand, just because we've been experiencing problems with the CSAE bandwidth, and it really was bad with episode 6, so I'm just recording it just to make sure everything's good, and let you know that we are in the process of upgrading the internet infrastructure here, so we will be going back to Facebook Live as soon as possible. Anyway, so scheduling content, how to do it, and why it's important. First off, why it's important is because primarily your audience is more important than you are when it comes to your content release. You should stick with when they're paying attention as opposed to when it's convenient to you to release content. So that means you might have to release stuff after hours, you might have to release it on weekends, depending upon what your association is doing. Your audience might be checking out your website and your social media on weekends as opposed to during business hours. So obviously, unless you're willing to pay your person overtime to come in on the weekends and do your content then, scheduling content is incredibly important. And when I talk about scheduling content, I just don't mean like preset, preloading and presetting content releases, but also having time set for when to release it, days as well as time during the day. So why it's good for your audiences when they're paying attention, because you want to release during the times when they're most likely to be online and looking at your website. Things come up and it gets pushed off. The important messages get pushed down by more tweets, more Facebook posts if you just post whenever. So you're not assured of your most valuable messages getting in front of your audience unless you do some kind of schedule. So for us at CSAE, for example, our primary times are Tuesdays and Thursdays, and off hours there is a lot of traffic on Saturday, but it's generally the same as the Tuesday, Thursday, so we don't have to schedule things for the weekend because we can handle it on the Tuesday and Thursdays. But if we wanted to, we do know that that option is available. And the way you find that out is by checking your analytics, your metrics. What time are your core audiences looking at your website? What day of the week? What time during those days? And your core audience is the people who are you're most likely to get value from your content, most likely to go convert from leads into customers or members. It depends on how you want to define it, but those are, I would say, the two most common ones. The people who are willing to give you money and give you their attention in one form or the other. So it's good to find it by them. So if you're a national association, you really look at the analytics that are Canada-wide. If you're dealing internationally, then you can look at the analytics when the traffic is coming in from your principal markets. Canada, do you deal with Europe, Africa, whatever. If you're a local association, then obviously it's more regional. So you just need some, a bit of intelligence and strategy when it comes to distilling the analytics down to devising when it is best for your audience to come in. And you don't want to just look at a single week. You don't want to pull the analytics for the previous week and say, okay, this is when our traffic was at its most. So we'll go with those days. No, longitudinal. Look at it over a year. See how it's trending over a year. Minimum 6 months, I would suggest. The longer the information you're able to pull from, the broader that window, the more accurate it becomes because the averages start to level out to be more informative. So look at as much information as you can to find the best days and the best times during those days. So as I said, ours is Tuesday to Thursday. And the optimum time for attention is from noon to 1 for us. So that's why I've chosen to do this at 12 o'clock on Thursday. It's a prime time for a live event. That's when people are looking. And it's also a good time for us to post our most relevant social media or have it prepared ahead of time. It doesn't have to be at that time, but it has to be available to view in that window. So if I post something early in the morning on Tuesday, Thursday, I have to make sure that that's not going to get pushed out of our social media channels by the time people show up at noon. So that's another thing to keep in mind. If you're putting something out before that prime window, make sure there's enough control in your organization. In other words, not everybody has access to Twitter, so people are, tweeting from their own departments, whatever they want, and they push down your core messages. So that's something you got to have. You have to have that structure that matches your schedule. And that goes back to having good social media policies in place. Know who is able to post to your social media and that they're all operating under the same plan, so they know that they're not killing somebody else's message by tweeting like, "Wow, thank goodness it's Thursday, one more day till the end of the week." That's it's a friendly little thing, but it's a useless message that pushes down a core message. Now, when we talk about how you go about scheduling, there are way too many platforms for content scheduling to mention them all. Some of the biggest known ones are Hootsuite for social media, for example. And then when you talk about other types of content, then you're looking at things that are typically more platform oriented. It depends on what you built your website with. If you've got .NET Nuke, for example, which is what CSAE runs, then our blog module allows us to preload blogs, set the publication time, and then publish it, which means it's good to go. And because we set the date for a later time, it doesn't actually go live until that time is set, even though we've set it to publish. So know how your software works. And things like WordPress and Drupal will allow you to do this too. It's such a standard feature that most content management systems will allow you this sort of access and tool. So you just have to figure out how to use it. And depending upon what you're using, there's all kinds of tutorials, and they're usually very simple. So figure out what your schedule is, and you can preload stuff. Now, why would you want to preload it? I don't always preload stuff for our blog, for example. Sometimes I put it in the morning and just publish it directly. But if I figure I've got a busy week coming ahead, I preload it, set the time so that and the date, so that I don't have to worry about it. It's also good if you've got a small content team. So at CSE, I am the content team, and for the most part, I'm the one who handles the blog and the page updates and the like. So what happens when I go on vacation? I'm gone for 2 weeks. Does that mean that the blog doesn't get posted for 2 weeks? We post twice a week. That's 4 blogs that are not happening. No, that's unacceptable. So what I would do is I would preload those and set them to launch, and that way I don't have to tell anybody else on staff, okay, I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks, so you're going to have to do this every Tuesday and every Thursday when I'm gone. I just have to say the blogs are preloaded, it's all taken care of, please just make sure that they load up and everything's working properly on those days. I'm going to go have fun, see you in 2 weeks. So that's a really big advantage of scheduling content internally for your association. And you can do that with a lot of social media content as well. If you have something like Hootsuite, it plugs in to your social media and does it as a third party, but there are a lot of social media platforms that also allow you to schedule content. Twitter does, Tumblr does. Surprisingly, some of the ones that don't are things like Google+. Facebook allows you to do some things scheduled, some things not, and obviously one of the biggest things one of the biggest detriments to using scheduled content, where you just like what I call fire and forget, it's loaded up and it's out of sight, out of mind, is that you don't necessarily respond the same way as if you're loading it up and participating actively. You do have that whole out of sight, out of mind issue that you have to deal with, where your content person has to be aware of, even though something is scheduled, they have to go back to it and have a look to see how people are responding to it. Just don't think, well, it's scheduled, I'm done with it, and it's out the door. You can't have that mentality when it comes to content, because content is a two-way relationship. Okay, and scheduling is that one way. You can't schedule people to respond to you, so you have to still be involved for that input and feedback from your audience. Now, scheduling content, as I said, is great for when you can schedule stuff for when your association is closed, when your business is closed, be it on the weekends or after hours. You will find that some people, your peak hours are 7 to 9, depending upon the day of the week and the social media channel. CSE, for example, does experience a spike from 7 to 9 on certain days, and as I said, on Saturday. And that's just because people have come home and these are the people who can't look while they're at their business. So like, let's see what's going on with CSE, and then we'll see like there's views picking up on our blog, and the metrics on our social media also picks up. I'll be at home with my family and my social content manager, so my social media at home is plugged into my social media here at CSAE, and I will get notifications that people are liking or sharing our social media, and I'll take the time to respond. So that's something you have to think about as well. Now, overall, it's also important to think beyond what people think of content as blogs and social media, that the standard web pages on your site are also content. Now, you can't, they're more static in nature, they're landing pages. So unless you have something that's more dynamic like events, calendars, and the like, or some other thing where you're doing regular updates, most of your website is going to be pretty static. But that doesn't mean you don't have to schedule some kind of content for them. Really look at what the page's intention is and decide if there's points where the traffic kind of peters off. Does it run its course and you have to update the messaging? So you're not scheduling releases so much as you would be within the sense of a blog or social media, but you're scheduling a checkup for that content. It's more of a maintenance thing. Check that your SEO is still relevant on your landing pages. Check that the messaging is still on target. And you do that again by looking at your analytics. See if things are petering off. You know, there's less traffic going to it. And that's also important to notice the relationship to your social media. It'll start to peter off if you're not driving traffic to it. You know, you're just kind of saying, okay, I'm going to leave it on its own. It might not do as well. But, you know, keyword relevancy might change. The value that social media is bringing might change. You know, some people might start using Facebook more as opposed to Twitter, and you've been using Twitter to drive people there more often. So just schedule regular maintenance and checkups for your landing pages too. Look into the data on a regular basis, add it to your content schedule. And when I talk about a content schedule, I'm not just talking about what you use to preload content. Have a calendar, an actual calendar, whether it's part of a content management system or something like a Google Calendar, but somewhere have a calendar that keeps track of what you're doing outside of the actual publication systems. Okay, you have to have something that brings it all together for you, and that includes the content that isn't necessarily handled by Hootsuite or whatever you're using. You know, because it's great that you can schedule tweets within Twitter, but that can't help you with your Facebook or your Tumblr or your Google Plus or your YouTube videos. It can't help you with your blogs. So unless you want to every day go and check every single one of the individual scheduling systems on all of your social media and all of your content management systems, have a central calendar that lets you organize this all at once, and preferably make it shareable. This is one of the things where Google Calendar is handy, in that you can share it with other people. They can access it. You know, Outlook allows it to a certain degree as well. Find something that suits your purposes, maybe that other people can add notes to, or make requests for content, depending upon how your team interacts with the content team. Your overall association interacts with the content team. You know, find something that just works for you. But I can't stress enough, get a centralized calendar together to keep track of these things so that things don't get missed. You know what's coming up, you know when it is. You can adjust on your calendar for when things change. You know, something's happening here, so this blog has to be moved up because, you know, it's not going to be relevant after that time, or, you know, you want to get the message out before that event. All of this is the sort of thing you have to have scheduled in a calendar. It is essential, or things will slip through the cracks. And of course, you can check it off once it's done. Mission accomplished. You can either delete it if you have no other means, but a lot of calendars have ways for you to indicate that tasks and events have been completed. So this is the basics of why scheduling content is extremely important. Of course, there are a lot more details to it. There's a lot of logistics involved, and I'd be absolutely thrilled to answer any questions anyone may have about scheduling contents, whether why you do it or how you should go about doing it, how to get it organized. So leave it in your comments or email me at steven@csae.com with your questions and your comments. Other than that, this has been episode 7 of Conquering Content with CSAE. I am Manager of Content, Steven Trustrum. The importance of scheduling content was what this episode was about, and I'll get up to you next week with what the next episode is going to be regarding. Hopefully it will be live again if we get the bandwidth problem here solved. Other than that, everybody, have a great rest of the week and enjoy your weekend.